Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Thursday, February 24th, 2022. I'm David Menzies and my co-host. Well, let me tell you about my co-host. You know, if she were a Star Trek fan, her phasers would always be set on fun. See what I did there? She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
David, I'm great, but I thought you were going to say the phasers are going to be set to stunning, and then I got fun.
Oh.
But okay, that's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's funny you should mention that. That was my original thought, Sheila, but you know, with human resources being what they are in 2022, I didn't want to dare set off a complaint process.
David,
what would I do without
great.
Rebel
How are
News?
you doing?
I'm doing great.
How are you doing? You're finally home.
Finally home. I'll tell you something. Is Ottawa the coldest capital city in the world?
No,
Every time.
I'm from near Edmonton, so no, it's
No, a
definitely
national
not.
capital. I mean, there's Moscow.
Oh, yeah, then definitely it is. Yeah.
It is. Maybe, but then I'm not sure what the average temperature is for Moscow. But I'll tell you, Sheila, every time we go there, it is just frigid. All 3 weekends were so frigid. It seems that the weather improves after the weekend. But Ottawa, I got to tell you, it did not resemble Ottawa, Ontario, Canada in 2022. It resembled more like East Berlin circa 1946. Roadblocks everywhere, something like 100 checkpoint Charlies, steel fencing. The perverse irony here, Sheila, is the convoy is long gone. The big rigs are long gone. The demonstrators are long gone. And yet Ottawa is more blockaded than when they were there the 3 weeks. Getting around that city is a nightmare. It's 3 times the travel time. And it's getting worse. On Friday, when we got there, they merely wanted to see, say, your confirmation of a hotel reservation, for example. Now the coppers phone the front desk. And I thought, oh, my God, you know, because I could hear on the cop cell phone, your call is very important to us. That's why we're going to make you wait in minus 20 wind chill weather for, a half hour or so. It is incredible. And for, of course, an emergency that does not exist. Even Justin Trudeau had his come to Jesus moment on that one last night. So, Sheila, it is absolutely shocking what has happened to that city because of the wounded ego of one man who is basically the laughingstock of the world right now.
Yeah, we were talking to Alexa this morning in our morning meeting, and she said the fences are still up, the checkpoints are still there. So it seems as though the Ottawa Stasi don't want to give their power back. The emergency never existed. It never existed. But even Justin Trudeau had to admit that the emergency as he saw it was over. But I think the emergency that caused Justin Trudeau to invoke the Emergencies Act, that's nowhere near over. It has to do with polling. However, the fences are still up.
Yep.
The truckers are gone, as you say. The emergency is officially over, if you take Justin Trudeau's word for it. The first thing that should have happened was that those fences should have come down. This is more political theater. This is just like when they left the January 6th fence up in DC for months and months and months and months because, you know, they had to show, you know, if this were an emergency or in that case, if this were an insurrection, the threat is always there. It's just right around the corner. And that's what they're doing here.
Oh, you and Alexa are so right, Sheila. And, you know, yesterday afternoon, myself, Maurizio, and Lincoln, we tried to deliver the petition from our viewers, more than 80,000 signatures, more than 900 pages of petition.
Yeah.
And we went to the Senate where literally behind the walls, the debate was going on regarding the Emergencies Act. Trudeau hadn't done that stunning about face yet. And the police would not let us in. Clearly, we're not going to the Senate wearing trouble on our shirts. We're not demonstrators. We're not truckers. But the answer was no. And the Senate is part of the cradle of our democracy. And we have, as you say, the Stasi saying, beat it, you're persona non grata. And I said to the RCMP officer that was giving us the bum's rush, Sheila, as I looked out at the streets of Ottawa from around the Senate building, which were uber quiet. I mean, Ottawa's almost a ghost town in certain areas of its downtown. I said, sir, could you kindly tell me where or what the emergency is? And he had no comment, and, please address your queries to media relations. It's unbelievable. I mean, there's no emergency. The emergency is us, members of the media, trying to deliver a petition, Sheila.
The emergency is that Steve Bell fancies himself to be the new Eric Eric Mielke. He was the head of the Stasi police for, I guess, the entire time that the Stasi was in existence. He was the head of the Stasi from 1957 until the fall of the Berlin Wall. That's who he fancies himself to be. He loves his fences. He loves his tyranny. He loves his jackboots. He doesn't love telling the truth when it comes to the treatment of protesters or the behavior of his cops. He was appointed, I think, after the other police chief decided, I'm not going to do the terrible things to these people that the government is asking me to do. He's the guy who was willing to do it, and he doesn't want to give away that power. It's just like watching the health bureaucrats hang on desperately to mandates that don't do anything. He's doing the exact same thing. These guys are professional bureaucrats. And if I learned anything about bureaucrats over the last 2 years, it's that they love unearned power and unaccountability, and they are never going to give it up until you snatch it from them.
You know, you're so right. And Sheila, on Sunday we went to that press conference with interim chief Steve Bell. And shockingly, really shockingly, when I asked him the query, how did my colleague and dear friend Alexa Lavoie get shot by a tear gas canister at point blank? You compared him to the Stasi head. I compare him to a fictional character from Hogan's Heroes, namely Sergeant Schultz. I know nothing. I saw nothing. Meanwhile, this is getting international publicity. Just before that press conference, Alexa was interviewed by a crew from Russia TV, RT. Yeah. And somehow the chief of police of Ottawa doesn't know about this. And then, as you saw, Sheila, he closes the press conference. And I told Alexa and Guillaume, I said, if I was writing this, I couldn't script it any better. He wanted to applaud the media, which by that he means the mainstream media, for doing such a stellar job. And also, some of them were subjected to slurs. So God forbid soy boy Evan Solomon has his feelings and sensibilities hurt. And there are investigations already underway, Sheila, for sensitive journalists getting verbal abuse from the demonstrators. But he doesn't know anything about a discharge of a firearm at point blank. That's incredibly serious. That's a real assault. And I'll tell you, Sheila, if that canister was shot at Alexa's head instead of her thigh, maybe we're having a different discussion today, God forbid. That was absolutely reckless. And for him to say, or more likely for him to pretend he didn't know about it because it wasn't Rosemary Barton at the CBC that got shot. It was Alexa Lavoie of Rebel News.
Could you imagine?
Oh, well, I was going to say something mean
cow.
there. I'll self-censor myself, but
I do it all the time.
Yeah, it's sad. It's a disgrace, and right now, why are those? And by the way, it's not just steel fences, Sheila. Part of the carnage of the new and improved so-called police blockade are giant cement blocks at strategic intersections, and I don't know what for. Everyone's out of town. And by the way, even though they are out of town, I went to a truck sanctuary a few days ago where this is private property, Sheila. They were offering a place for the truckers to go and get free repairs, to get food, to have a shower. And the OPP came to harass the owner of this private property without a warrant, I might add.
Yeah.
I don't know if she thought the Emergencies Act precludes that. Maybe it does. I better read the fine print. And he told her to vamoose. But the point I'm getting at, Sheila, this was about half an hour outside of Ottawa, this several acre large sanctuary. So it's not good enough that these big rig drivers are out of Ottawa proper. What do they want? They want them out of the province. They want them out of the country. You know, so yeah, could you get the hell out of our great dominion? Meanwhile, Roxham Road, fully open right now as we speak to illegal aliens. No problem. The RCMP turned into the Royal Canadian Bellhop Police as they tote their bags in. Again, Sheila, are we living in the bizarro Superman world right now?
Not even Roxham Road. Ottawa is open to illegal migrants.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it's official, but there's a good faction of city council who, again, I will say, look exactly how you think they would look, who are very pro making Ottawa a sanctuary city. And those are the same shrieking voices saying, get these truckers out of our city. They don't belong here. These Canadian citizen truckers that keep you alive every single day. Yeah, let's get them out of our city. But you people who didn't even have the respect for the country that you're planning to live in to come in through the front door, you get on over here, you big lugs. Welcome to Ottawa.
And folks, if you think Sheila Gunn Reid is exaggerating by stating truckers keep you alive, if you are alive, thank a trucker. Tucker Carlson said it so well. These are the guys that bring the groceries to the supermarket. They bring the medicine to the pharmacies. How the hell do you think it gets there? It is through the truckers. And these are the ones you're vilifying and demonizing. I'll tell you, Sheila, I would love, if it was only possible, the trucking community to do a blockade of deliveries to the city of Ottawa, because within 48 hours, when the shelves are depleted, oh boy, I wonder if city council and the woke members of the capital city are then going to vilify and demonize the truckers when their bellies start to rumble.
Yeah, once the kale stocks and the avocado supplies dwindle to dangerous levels, we will see absolute mayhem. We'll see people slapping and scratching at each other because they can't do anything more vigorous with regard to physical activity. We should tell everybody what we're doing here because we're 13 minutes into the show. We haven't done that. And we have some unfinished business from yesterday because Ezra and I went live yesterday to discuss Trudeau blinking. The truckers made him blink. Also, I don't think they would have gotten enough votes in the Senate to block the Emergencies Act from being, permanently in place for 30 days. Sure, just 30 days. Yeah, right. But I think that there would have been enough Liberal senators breaking ranks with the party quite thoughtfully that it would have been catastrophically embarrassing to Justin Trudeau. So that's why I think before they were able to do their final votes and final debate, he was like, better yank that out of there and save a little bit of face and look like a reasonable person, as though that didn't evacuate the building quite a while ago.
Sheila, what we saw yesterday, I think, the metaphor I liken it to is it's a bunch of kids having a baseball game, and the kid that owns the ball realizes in the bottom of the inning they're going to lose, so he decides to take the ball and go home, and he's content with a tie. I think one of the turning points, forgive me, I can't remember his name, but it was an independent senator that was appointed by Justin Trudeau.
Independent.
Yeah, I know. But that's how they describe him. Former judge who wanted nothing to do with this. And I think when Trudeau got whiff of that, I'm not so sure this would get the rubber stamp. Finally, this might have been the one time the Senate actually justified its existence, not as just being an assembly of yes men and women, but taking a stand for democracy and our freedoms. I'm not so sure, even with all the packed Liberals in there, this would have gone through. I think that's the real reason Trudeau took his ball and went home and proclaimed victory.
Yeah, the Senate's a very weird place these days since, can you just stop for a second? Let's look at how crazy this is. It used to just be liberals and liberal senators and conservative senators. Now, because Justin Trudeau unbridled them, at least on the liberal side, from partisanship, so he says. We've got the progressive Senate group now. We've got the Canadian senators group, which is people who were conservative, who left the Conservative Party, and liberals who left the Liberal Party. Those might be the actual only independents in there. And then there's the conservatives, and then there are the independent senators, which are just liberal senators who can't use the name liberal because Justin Trudeau said, no, you guys, I said you're not partisan anymore, even though they vote with the party all the time. So it's a weird place there now, and it's a real mixed bag. And you can pretty well predict how things are going to go, but not this time. I think this was just such an extraordinary circumstance, and Justin Trudeau was so extraordinarily tyrannical, and the actions of the police were just so visibly terrible that I don't think many senators could have put their name to that, continuing for 30 days.
Yeah, I think you're right about that, Sheila. And by the way, folks, we're still going to get that big box of your names, more than 80,000 of you that signed the petition decrying the invocation of the Emergencies Act. And I think the way we're going to do it, Sheila, is just go to Canada Post, whatever they're charging, because get a load of this, folks, off camera, as they're preventing Lincoln and Maurizio and myself from getting past the checkpoint, Charlie, the Canada Post guy just sails right on through, easy peasy, no problem. So I guess the RCMP considered us to be, I don't know, 3/4 of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and we couldn't deliver our mail to the Senate, but somebody with a Canada Post logo on his shoulder, yeah, nothing to see here, folks. I guess that's what we should have done, Sheila. Instead of showing our media credentials, we should have worn a Canada Post jacket, and that gets us in past this draconian security there.
I'm full of jokes about how terrible Canada Post is right now. Like, I'm trying to, again, this is one of the times where I want to keep it to myself. But I mean, you could mail it and we could have it there by the next pandemic. Also, we'd have to do a crowdfund for just how much mailing a stack of paper costs if you go through Canada Post these days. Anyways, Now we're at 10:18 my time, and I still haven't told everybody what we are doing. So this is the Rebel News daily live stream. Hopefully you figured that out by now. It used to just be hosted on Friday by Ezra Levant, but then the pandemic struck, and obviously there's more news than ever. Sometimes we do 2 live streams when news breaks, but because it used to just be on YouTube, we've had to make some adjustments, because once Biden got elected, Big Tech didn't have to pretend anymore, and the mask slipped, and we were completely demonetized by YouTube. And YouTube has put in all these onerous restrictions about what we can and can't say. So there may come a time in today's broadcast where we cut YouTube because we're getting into like dangerous territory, and I don't want to be the one that ruins our channel and gets us cut off from nearly 1.6 million YouTube subscribers. Although David's on the air with me today, so I might be able to get away with blaming him. So anyway, we will cut the feed at one point. And we want to encourage you, if you are watching us on YouTube, maybe consider migrating over to one of the more free speechy, that's not a real word, platforms where we are simultaneously streaming. So those are Getter, which is a new one for us, Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U. And those last 3, Rumble, Odyssey, and Super U, give you the opportunity to support us completely willingly by means of a paid chat. Rumble, Rant, Odyssey, Hyper Chat, Super U, Shout. If you do that, Mr. Producer will send them to me in a message, and David and I will do our best to read your comment on air and address your query or question or story ID to us. And with all that being said, we've got a few from yesterday that we need to tidy up, because Ezra and I were streaming yesterday as the news broke. But I had to, because it was sort of impromptu, I did have other places that I needed to be, namely my daughter's basketball practice. So you had to leave before I could finish reading the chats. But we promised our viewers that we would get to the chats. So we're going to get to them today, because I'm a woman of my word. So these are some of the chats that we'll read right now that came in last night about the Emergencies Act, and then we'll move on to the news of the day. Because, I think there's other stuff happening in the world. I hear there's a war breaking out in the former Soviet Union, so we'll get to that too. So first chat from RJ Cat. Gave us $100 last night. I'm very sorry we didn't get to this then. Says, keep up the great work. We definitely will.
Well, that's my kind of cat. I like that cat better than Trans Cat. What do you think about that, Sheila Gunn Reid?
Trans Cat's still my favorite.
Bit of a joke there.
It's a real inside joke. Juice Moose gives us $5. If they use the hacked list, this is the federal government giving it to the banks to freeze people's bank accounts, then should they not be charged with being in possession of stolen property? There's a lot of things that the federal does that are not technically legal. But what are the consequences for them? What are they going to do? Investigate themselves? I think actually Justin Trudeau said that yesterday, and I'm like, oh, okay. So you're going to do an investigation about why we made you do this thing to us because we didn't listen the first time. Seems reasonable. He's going to do an investigation into why he had to use the Emergencies Act to deal with peaceful citizens. I can't even imagine how that's going to turn out.
And more disturbingly, Sheila, we have seen law enforcement breaking the law to allegedly enforce the law. That wonderful report from it was a despicable report, but great journalism by Sid Fazard near the Coutts border, where he proved that RCMP officers deliberately damaged 3 heavy excavators to the tune of more than $100,000. And in Ottawa, I did a piece that's on the website, folks. Jim Zinger of Medicine Hat, Alberta, he had his rig, first of all, vandalized by the Antifa types, tires slashed, shotgun shells in the cab, all kinds of graffiti. But here's the thing. He was parked legally on private property. Wasn't honking his horn, wasn't blocking an intersection, wasn't in a no-stopping zone, nothing like that. The owner of the private parking lot did not call police to tow him away. And the reason why he was still there was he needed a mobile repair crew to come and replace the tires that had been slashed. That wasn't good enough for the police, who got a heavy tow dispatched and then are currently holding the truck for 7 days. Why? I don't know why. Maybe to financially discipline him, because Jim will be on the hook for both the heavy tow and 7 days worth of storage. How the hell does anyone think that's good policing? We try to back the blue here, Sheila, but it's getting really hard these days when you see in Alberta, the RCMP turning into vandals, and in Ottawa, the cops turning into thieves.
Mr. Producer says we've got a ton of comments coming in, so we're going to do our best to blast through at least last night's and before we start spending time on the new ones. A Big Bear 74 gives us $20. Now the mandates must go and all of our rights and freedoms must be restored. I think that the convoy movement is not stopping. I'm sure there will be a convoy in Edmonton this weekend, and it's going to be just as big as ever, and it's going to be just as loud as ever, despite the fun burglar ban on honking that nobody seems to care about in Edmonton. I honked at that sign that told me not to honk, and then I gave it the finger. I don't care.
Does that no honking mandate, does that apply to geese, Sheila?
David.
I don't know.
Let's
Shoot
keep
them out
going.
of the sky.
I hope it applies to geese. That's the only people it should apply to, and geese aren't people. But yeah, it should apply to the geese and not the horns. Cheryl Dawn V gives us $1. Do you think the Emergencies Act was brought in so Freeland could permanently change the FinStrat to seize funds in the future? Now it's not needed. I remember back in 2016, Ezra did a story about the federal government using the idea of just reaching into your bank account and just taking your money out for whatever they needed. And the banks were perfectly willing to go along with it. So this has been a long time in the making, and I think this was just the thing they needed to test the waters, so dip their toe into the financial system and see what they could do to change it, what they could get away with, and what the banks would comply with.
And Sheila, you can almost argue 'twas ever thus in terms of certain sectors, such as the mainstream media. Forever, CBC funded by taxpayer dollars to more than $1 billion a year. More recently, $600 million plus for the newspapers and magazines out there that the federal Liberals take a fancy to. And it's a direct withdrawal. If you don't like the Toronto Star, the CBC, too bad. We're taking your money anyways. And so this is just really an extension of that as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Torontonian gives us $30. Well, thanks so much. Never thought I would love the Senate. You know, every time I'm like, nuke that thing. We don't need it. It's undemocratic. We've done our best to reform it within the system here in Alberta. And Justin Trudeau just appoints the most useless people in spite of the democratic choices of Albertans, because we elect our senators when we go to municipal elections. And then the tradition is that the federal government appoints who we've chosen to represent us. Justin Trudeau hasn't been doing that. He's been like, oh, you're useless and partisan. Perfect Liberal. Oh, you're the only Liberal left in Alberta. Perfect. You're appointed to the Senate. $170,000 a year for you. So that's what we're experiencing here. But every time I think, let's get rid of the Senate, there's a good senator and I'm like, oh, that you're good. Like Denise Batters, who stood up to Aaron O'Toole and was tossed out of caucus, and she's back in caucus now. She's the winner. Aaron's the loser. I'm Team Denise.
You know, and it's funny, Sheila, when people say, was the convoy a success or a failure? I say a success. Look at all the provincial lockdown mandates that are being reduced in their severity. No, yes, they haven't been completely tossed out, which was one of the demands, but they've certainly, there's now deadlines for when they're leaving. And speaking of leaving, Aaron O'Toole, this was the last straw. To this day, Sheila, I still don't know, going back more than 3 weeks when Aaron O'Toole was first asked about this, if he supports the convoy or not. And that tells you everything you need to know about Aaron Flip-Flop O'Toole. And he's gone. And, as far as I'm concerned, you could put a shaved monkey as head of the Conservative Party of Canada, and it's an upgrade compared to that guy.
Oh, yeah. Aaron O'Toole was like, do I support the convoy? Hang on, let me call the CBC and ask. Hi, CBC, do I support the convoy? Is that cool?
But I can change. Please.
Just tell me what I should do.
I will love you. I won't beat you anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely passionate gives us $20, says liars have to censor, the truth persuades. Yeah, Justin Trudeau has not learned anything about, what's that quote? You can tear out a man's tongue, but you're not proving him a liar. You're telling the world that you fear what he might say. That's exactly what Justin Trudeau is doing with his censorship of the internet. John T. Singus. Sorry, go ahead, David.
Oh, I didn't know that saying. Is that from Game of Thrones or something? Or
George R.R. Martin.
It is? No.
No. John T. Singus, no. Not everything relevant came from Game of Thrones. Sometimes there's this other book called the Bible, and there's some pretty good quotes in there, too. John T. Singus gives us $1. Madam X raised a tyrant. Are we referring to Margaret... 10 different last names, but she goes Trudeau because that's the one that makes bank? Is that who you're talking about?
Madam X.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. What are we going? Oh, yeah. Thank you, George R.R. Martin, Clash of Kings. How do you like that? I'm very smart. Old Soul gives us $1. Old Soul 1 gives us $5. The Canadian Parliament, all parties have been captured by the World Economic Forum. It must be exposed before they implement digital ID and financial and medically enslave all of us. Have not they already done that?
Yeah, what happened to Sunny Way, Sheila? I'm waiting still. It's been like 7 years.
Pepper spray ways. David Bird, 14, $20. Banks need to be sued. Police need to be jailed for the harm they caused. Police brought guns to a hockey game. Look, I'm not against police carrying guns. I'm not. I'm pro firearm. Definitely. And police have a dangerous job to do. And I'm not anti-cop. I know it's getting harder and harder, especially for Ezra, to back the blue. I'm not anti-cop. I'm anti-bad cop because I'm so pro-good cop. Yeah. I don't like the idea of these parasitic bad cops getting away with their crappy, tyrannical, authoritarian behavior because they get to trade on the reputations built by good cops. That's what I don't like.
And I can tell you something, Sheila, I'm going to give a shout out to one of the few downtown Ottawa restaurants that remained open throughout all this nonsense. It was a true sanctuary for people and journalists to go in and warm up because it was just so frigid in Ottawa. And that's the Red Pepper. It's a wonderful Thai restaurant.
Great. You just got them attacked by Antifa, David. Good work.
No. I mean, they're near the corner of Queen and Bank. They're wonderful food, low price, great value. And I met, the fellow recognized me. He was an RCMP officer. Naturally, I'm not going to give his name out because I don't want his career to be jeopardized. But he came to me and made the point that as a veteran RCMP officer, he was disgusted and shocked by what happened to me in December by his fellow RCMP members who were part of the Trudeau security detail at that Toronto restaurant. And you know what? That warmed my heart, Sheila, that this is not just an autonomous squadron of RoboCops that all think alike. He was so sincere, and it almost makes up for what those thugs did to me by standing on a public sidewalk hoping to ask the Prime Minister a question. And you saw what happened. They grabbed me and bounced my head off a fence for absolutely no reason whatsoever. But he spoke out against them, and good on that. I wish I could identify him so people don't think I'm making this up. But there are good cops, even on rotten forces out there.
Yeah, and I think the situation with police officers, and I guess all of our public institutions, including universities, as if they could get worse, but I think they will, because we've pushed all the moral objectors out. Normally, in normal times, those people end up in positions of management because they have this strong sense of right and wrong, of civil liberties, of, they're anti-coercion, they're pro-freedom, they're the conscientious objectors to bad orders. Normally, those are the people that we put in positions of power. That's a leadership skill. Yep. Those people have been actively forced out of their jobs. They've been fired for that one quality, which makes them something that should be a leader. And so I worry about the future of these institutions. How
sad, Sheila. Basically, what you're saying is wokeism and cancel culture have even come to the police forces.
Well, and we're left with the worst of the worst. Yeah. We're left with the people who will go along to get along and do anything without objection. Yep. And so we're going to see more of what happened to Alexa and what happened to you when those are the cops left behind. Yeah. Lonsmos gives us $5. I think politicians have forgotten their job title is public servant. Lisa Proust. Hi, Lisa. Lisa, the super fan. She gives us $50. Boy, that's generous, Lisa. This is for Alexa's defense. I'm beyond appalled for what happened to her. I met her, and she is as amazing as everyone at Rebel. Love and admiration to Rebel News. You guys have all had the pleasure of meeting Lisa in person, and I never have. I'm a little bit jealous.
Yes, and Lisa's absolutely right about Alexa. Alexa, folks, if you've never met her, that is a beautiful spirit. She is a warrior princess. She's a hard worker. I mean, even after she got shot, she wasn't staying in hospital. She got right back out into the field. Alexa is a gem. We're lucky to have her. And what happened to her is absolutely grotesque. And when I see her next, I want to find out, now that interim chief Steve Bell knows about what happened to her, how's the investigation proceeding, Chief? Or are you too busy investigating the slurs thrown at Evan Solomon of CTV? That's what I want to know, Sheila.
And I don't even think those were threats thrown at Evan Solomon. They were just mean.
Yeah.
just mean. Like my Twitter mentions. Like, that's what he was getting, but in real life.
Yeah.
Who cares? We'll do one more chat that just came in today, and then we'll go to the news of the day because as some of you may or may not know, war is breaking out in Ukraine. So we'll talk about that. And we talked sort of a little bit about our editorial position on this in the morning meeting, and we're anti-invasion. I think that's where we're at. We're neither anti-Russia or anti-Ukraine or anything like that. I'm pro-sovereignty, which is why I'm really worried about Taiwan, which is why I objected to the communist takeover of Hong Kong, which is why I'm pro-Israel. I'm pro-sovereign nation, sovereign people. DJ Weeks gives us $200. Boy, that's very generous.
That's very generous.
Real news is here. Good work. Well, I thank you very much. Solid use of the gifts, Mr. Producer. Now, I think maybe we should talk about the news of the day. I'll just scroll back up to where we were. What did we have first on the list? I think
we covered that, the Emergency Act being done, but certainly the Russian invasion. And you know what, Sheila, you and I, we can't pretend to be experts when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. But the angle I pursue is how is the information being portrayed? I listened to a appalling roundtable on News Talk 1010 early this morning, in which the panelists all put in their 2 cents worth on Russian Ukraine, and basically saying such profound statements as, isn't it shocking? And then coming to the a conclusion, it's Donald Trump's fault. Just absolutely amazing. What's incredible is that if there is someone in the Western world to blame, it is that doddering fool in the White House right now, President Biden. The amazing thing is, Putin and presumably Xi, which undoubtedly has his eyes on Taiwan right now, they know there's a weakling in the White House. The world was so safe for 4 years, from 2016 to 2020, when Donald Trump was in power, and it's directly related to what's going on. One of the incredible achievements of Donald Trump was U.S. energy independent for the first time in 70 years, actually exporting energy. That's over now. In fact, last year, I believe America bought something like 232 million barrels of oil from the Soviet Union, or Freudian slip, from Russia. And here's the thing, Sheila. We are in the West, and even Canada has imported Russian oil. We are funding Putin to go on this invasion. Look what's happened to energy prices. Just heard an interview with Dan McTague, the former Liberal. Don't hold that against him, folks. He's a classical Liberal. He now is an energy watchdog. And he says by Saturday, prices are going to go up by at least 7 or 8 cents. Forget about $100 barrel oil. It's going to $130 barrel oil. And the biggest beneficiary of this is, guess who? The invaders from Russia. So because of this green movement, this war on climate change, that is directly what is enabling Russia to, I mean, in Europe, Sheila, I understand energy prices in the last couple of years tripled, right? And most of the European nations are completely dependent on Russia. And you even have the likes of John Kerry. Did you see that item, Sheila, where he's worried?
We're going to show it.
Yeah.
We're going to show it. We got a video clip of just how bad this is. Because, again, that's where I am on this.
Yeah.
I'm anti-war. I'm anti-invasion. I'm pro-leaving Ukraine alone. Yeah. And I think that has a lot to do with where I am in the world, in Canada, who my neighbors are and why they came to be. So I have a very specific worldview on this. So I think, though, the same people who are on the American left, who are all of a sudden war hawks, by the way, where they're like, no, we have to like send another generation of American young men and women to die on foreign soil fighting a war that isn't theirs. They enabled much of this through climate policy and people often ask me, Sheila, why do you care so much about the carbon tax and climate policy and the Green New Deal and all of this? Is because what's happening in Russia is completely enabled by the green left.
Yep.
And it goes way back to when Russia was funding anti-fracking campaigns in North America to protect their market share of the natural gas that Europe consumes. That enabled and enriched the Russian war machine. So good job, AOC types.
Yeah.
This is on you. You know, like, you could easily offset all the Russian oil bought by the U.S. by just letting Keystone go ahead.
Yeah,
just let Keystone go ahead. But Biden and the environmental green left, they chose Moscow over Calgary.
Yep.
That's what they did.
And they chose virtue signaling over reality. They chose inflation over stability. And that was the first order of business President Biden did, wasn't it, Sheila? Kill Keystone XL, right?
Yeah. The very first thing he did, it was the first thing he did, is he revoked the permit on the very nearly finished, completely ready to just flip the switch, Keystone XL pipeline. And then just a few short months later, what did he do? Go groveling to OPEC, the dictators of the world, for more blood oil, for more war oil. Because again, he chooses Riyadh, he chooses Caracas, he chooses Moscow over Calgary and Fort McMurray.
And Sheila, how does that help the war on climate change, just by replacing the destination from which the oil is coming from? You're still consuming the same amount of oil, right? In fact, you could argue it's worse because the transportation costs to get those barrels of oil across the ocean, there's a carbon footprint associated with that. So it doesn't make sense.
Well, Canadian expat oil workers, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. If you have worked in Russia, if you've worked in Kazakhstan, if you've worked in the Middle East, you know what their standards are like for on-site environmental management. You know just how terrible it is. So if you really care about tangibly the environment, you would not want any oil from them at all.
And if you don't know, please go and read our boss's wonderful book, Ethical Oil, which will tell you all you need to know about the ethically sourced oil in Canada versus what is coming from some of those dictatorships, as Sheila mentioned. Do we have that John Kerry clip? Because this is really beautiful. Unbelievable. Mr. Producer, do we have that? There we go.
I'm concerned about Ukraine because the people are...
Oh, we got some background feedback there, Sheila, so we're going to try to...
We'll wait till we sort that out, because that was really something else. Mr. John Kerry takes the private jet, by the way,
because of the people
to COP24, whatever it is I covered.
In terms of international law and trying to change boundaries of international law by force, I thought we lived in a world that had said no to that kind of activity. And I hope diplomacy will win. But massive emissions consequences to the war, but equally importantly, you're going to lose people's focus. You're going to lose certainly big country attention because they will be diverted, and I think it could have a damaging impact. So, you know, I think hopefully President Putin would realize that in the northern part of his country, they used to live on 66% of a nation that was over frozen land. Now it's thawing, and his infrastructure is at risk, and the people of Russia are at risk. And so I hope President Putin will help us to stay on track with respect to what we need to do for the climate.
So, Sheila, John Kerry is saying that the real bad fallout of the Russian invasion of Ukraine is not the slaughter of innocents, which is going to happen and is happening as we speak, but we are diverting our attention from the real war, the war on climate change. You know, John, don't worry, because I have it on good authority that many of those Russian tanks, they're plug-in hybrids, and some have solar panels on them. And I saw one photograph of a Russian tank on top of the turret. It had a windmill going. Yeah, so it is an ethically sourced climate change kind of war. What kind of an idiot is this, Sheila? But it speaks to where the Democrats are, where the left is in terms of virtue signaling versus reality.
He said before anything else, before he talked about the human cost, that was the very last thing he mentioned in that clip, by the way, the Russian people. The first thing he said was, we have to think about the emissions consequences of a war. As in the bombing and the, I guess, diesel-powered tanks and trucks, they are going to cause a rise in emissions in Ukraine. And so that's the real problem here. And it's going to, all this distraction happening in Ukraine, this, the re-energization of the Soviet Union and the extinguishing of Ukrainian sovereignty after a generation. That's not the real problem here. The real problem is it's taking people off their eye off the prize of fighting climate change. There were, I think, 40 Ukrainian soldiers killed last night. 40, it could be more, but that was in one sort of skirmish battle. I thought it was 40 Ukrainian soldiers. Those were an afterthought. The people of Russia were an afterthought because Mr. Melted Candle Face Ketchup Prince, he's mad because we're not paying attention to climate change anymore. He's still married to the Ketchup Princess, right?
Oh, the Heinz lady. Oh, yeah.
And he does look like a melted candle more than ever, by the way. His face is just like falling off.
No, you're so right. Somewhere Al Gore and David Suzuki and Greta Thunberg weep. And it's not over bloodshed. It is over the carbon emissions that come from a war. It proves my theory, Sheila, why Mad Magazine went out of business in 2019. It used to be a license to print money, but you cannot parody the world anymore. It is self-parody. There's no use in going to a journal like that for satire. The front page of any newspaper today is satire. Sorry, Sheila, you were going to say something there?
No, I was just actually going to send something to Mr. Producer in case people think I'm crazy, because they think I'm crazy sometimes. When I talk about Russia funding the anti-fracking movement in the United States, because people say, Sheila, that's a conspiracy theory. And why would this pro-natural gas country fund people opposed to natural gas in the United States? Well, it's because Russia was trying to protect its market share, because the Russian war machine is funded by by Germany buying the bulk of their natural gas. And they didn't want fracking to boom in the United States so that they could, use liquefied natural gas, put it in a cargo ship and just send it across the ocean to European consumers. Russia funded environmental groups. They gave millions to anti-fracking groups in the United States. Yep. And this is from, I think, the Washington Examiner. There's plenty of evidence in the form of a tangible money trail. And this is another thing. This is why we really have to be cautious of foreign funding that is going to environmental NGOs in Canada, because it could be coming directly from the Russians. And that's the real Russian collusion that nobody's talking about. They're talking about the fake stuff with Donald Trump. And it's like, actually, Russia is funding the opposition to our jobs here in Alberta. But the people who look for Russians under every bed, they don't care, because the ends justify the means for them. But they said Russia benefits from stirring up controversy about U.S. energy production. U.S. energy exports to European countries are increasing, which means they will have less reason to rely on Russia for their energy needs. This, in turn, will reduce Russia's influence on Europe to Russia's detriment and Europe's benefit. That's why Russian agents attempted to manipulate Americans' opinions about pipelines, fossil fuels, fracking, and climate change. The American people deserve to know if what they see on social media is the creation of a foreign power seeking to undermine our domestic energy policy.
Absolutely.
You know who did
astonishing.
more for Russia than anybody? Greta Thunberg.
Yeah. Yeah, and in second place is Joe Biden, I would say, Sheila. It's so sad, as I mentioned, under Donald Trump, U.S. had energy independence. Here in Canada, we have the third largest reserves in the world, Sheila, when it comes to oil and gas. And it is locked because our virtue signaler in Ottawa, Justin Trudeau, again, his wokeism will not let us develop our own resources and be free of oil from dictatorships that you see around the world that tend to have oil reserves. And we've got the third largest oil reserve in the world. You know what? It's so frustrating, Sheila, and especially I can only imagine, like, you're out in oil country, you're out in Alberta, how the workers, how the blue-collar guys that are going out there and doing that incredibly hard work in harsh conditions, how they must feel by these nitwit leaders preventing them from extracting this incredible mineral wealth that would not be fueling Vladimir Putin's war against Ukraine.
You know, I am just continuing down this Washington Examiner article, and it is really something else. So they've identified the congressional investigators. So this is just not just speculation garnered on the internet. Congressional investigators have identified the Sea Change Foundation from San Francisco, where all of these places are headquartered. They've been identified as a major conduit for Russian funding. Then this thing acts as the Tides Foundation, which that will actually come up later on. The organization, Sea Change Foundation, has given out $400 million between 2007 and 2015, but it continues to operate in the shadows. Much of Sea Change's funding came from the Simons Foundation. And then the Sea Change Foundation has donated to several environmental groups that have worked to block fracking and pipeline construction. And then it says that Sea Change gave $8 million to the Tides Foundation.
Oh.
So they're drawing a straight line from Sea Change to Tides. Tides dumps money into Canada to block Canadian pipelines. And this is the Russian collusion that nobody is talking about because they're like, Donald Trump wasn't hard enough on Russia. Well, Russia minded its own business when Donald Trump was in power. What's happening now?
It sure was. That's the real Russian collusion. It's on the left, Sheila, as opposed to the bogus Russian collusion with Donald Trump, which has already been debunked for a couple of years now. And still, they maintain this narrative. I heard it this morning. This is all Donald Trump's fault thanks to Russian collusion. These people must think the Easter Bunny's real, too. If there are any kids viewing, I'm sorry about that.
I think it was the Red Deer police gave the Easter Bunny an anti-lockdown ticket, or at least an Easter Bunny event, an anti-lockdown ticket here in Alberta. So fightthefines.com. Yeah, we did. We are helping the Easter Bunny event. Anyways, let's get to these because Mr. Producer says we've got a ton of chats coming in. Harper will always be my PM, gives us $5. Best duo on live TV. Well, thank you very much. I did have some Skype problems there. I think that Russia is attacking Elon Musk and my Starlink, maybe. Russia will be another thing. Joey will add to his accomplishments of F-ups, and he's not even halfway through his term. The U.S. cannot even fix simple border issues or out-of-control crime in the U.S. Yeah.
And meanwhile, Sheila, I understand in certain regions in California, gas is now at $6 a gallon.
Oh, you know what, though? It's going to be a good year for our oil patch friends here in Alberta.
Well, that's true.
With the price of oil so high, I always say, you know what? When we're talking about our big dreams here, me and my husband, about what we're going to do, like, this year we buy a new combine, and we always say, next boom. We'll do it the next boom. This might be our next boom.
Sheila, will it be a plug-in hybrid combine?
No, we want it to work. So, Lisa Proust. Sorry, Lisa. You told me how to say it once. I'm sorry. $5. Love you both. Kindly read my donation from last night. Beautiful Alexa. We did. And thank you so much for your support all the time, Lisa. Harper will always be my PM. Gives us $5 and says, I think G, me too, is also watching how Joey will F this up so he knows if he hits Taiwan, nothing will happen. I can't see how anyone looks at JT Baby or Joey Biden, I suppose, as a serious, credible threat. Yeah, if I were in Taiwan, I would be very serious. If you want to ever see a free Taiwan, I guess now's your chance to visit, because this is, I think, a test run. If Russia can take over the second largest nation in Europe, 40 million people, China can certainly just swamp Taiwan, and that's the end of her.
And Sheila, for those who don't care about Ukraine, I remember it was some 20 years ago, Ukraine was convinced to dismantle its nuclear program because with the guarantee that, well, NATO has your back, and I don't see any movement by NATO right now. So I'm sure they're suffering from buyer's remorse. Then where do we draw the line? Do you think Putin will stop at the Ukraine? Will it be then Hungary, Poland?
Moldova?
Yeah.
Poland. He's already said parts of Moldova, parts of Poland belong in Greater Ukraine, and if Greater Ukraine is now part of Russia, then parts of Poland are going to be parts of Russia. He is going to flex his muscles in the entire region.
Yeah, it's like a giant game of Risk, isn't it? But except that it's real, and there's going to be so much bloodshed. Unbelievable.
Trump's gone for 2 years, and the Soviet Union is just back.
Yeah. Back in the USSR. You can put that as the theme now.
Yeah. Trifia Proton Mail gives us $10. Neil here. Could we get Daniel Bosch and Carpenter on the show to settle their differences? Would be entertaining. I don't know who either one of those people are. And I'm sorry. I just focused. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I don't often go back and read the live chat. Sometimes I'll go back and read the messages or the YouTube comments. But Mr. Producer reliably informs me that those people argue in our live chat with each other. And do you know what? Sort it out like gentlemen. Agree to disagree. This is a free speech place, just as long as you don't start dividing our people into the different factions of Team Daniel and Team Carpenter.
Pistols at dawn, I say, Sheila.
You know what? I went to dueling pianos and there was no dueling. And I was a little disappointed. I didn't even get an argument. And that's not a joke. I was like, when does the fighting start? But there was no fighting. Harper will always be my PM, gives us $2. I'm truly amazed to hear baby JT will actually give his new power back so early. He didn't give it back. It was going to be a public relations blunder. Wonder if the woke U.S. Army will ever use EV tanks or EV jets to send troops on EV trucks. You know, the wokeism infecting militaries. Oh. Those chickens are coming home to roost real fast.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure the Russians don't care about that stuff.
You're right. Instead of being taught how to fight, now they're obsessed with making sure the members of the U.S. Armed Forces take critical race training theory. Yeah. So,
you know, and it's bad everywhere in things that are really, really important, where you need to not be focused like a laser beam on those things, but you have to be focused on public safety. Yeah. For example, I think, I'm not sure if it got published yesterday, but I wrote up something because somebody leaked me a CBSA email. And once a month they get these, it's like a newsletter about how not to be racist or how to be more woke. And yesterday's one that came out to the poor suffering people of the CBSA Atlantic region was about white fragility and white allyship or something like that. I really forget because it was just a lot of words that I would never use except to make fun of them. And one of them was like, white saviorism, and they actually described like volunteerism as white saviorism. And there was another thing, and basically it described like getting along with your diverse colleagues in the workplace and not fighting with them. That was a problem. They said, no, you need to be confrontational about these issues, and white people tend not to be confrontational about this stuff. Well, yeah, because sometimes you get called racist apropos of nothing, so you just sort of avoid that. But secondarily, it's called being workplace appropriate. I don't think you should be fighting about race issues in the workplace, in a normal workplace. But this was this email that went out to the CBSA. And so we wrote it up because it was so unbelievably woke. But I thought, is this really what our border guards should be concerning themselves with? I'm not so sure.
And Sheila, white fragility, did you say? Is that what happened to that Olympic skier who had his private parts frozen on his last run? Is that what you're getting at here?
I didn't watch the Olympics, so I don't even know anything about that ridiculous story. I did not watch the Genocide Olympics at all.
I guess when you're only wearing spandex when it's minus 20 or whatever, those boys can get damaged. Anyway,
let's keep going. John Entwistle gives us $20. Cash is king. Do not leave anything in a Trudeau-controlled bank or credit union. That's what mattresses are for. There's a lot of that happening. My cousin is a bank manager, and he was like, you have no idea the people. I was talking to him yesterday, and he said, like, you have no idea the amount of people who are coming, and a small town bank, right? He said, people are just coming in scared, wanting to take out their money, not knowing what to do with it because they're worried that they're going to be debanked because of their politics, which is really, it's happening. So they're right to be scared.
And Sheila, I wonder, because there's all these whispers about a run on the banks. And I wonder what the amount really is when you follow. Is it millions? Is it billions? Because we keep hearing these anecdotes. You just said that, manager in a small town bank saying you have no idea. I know of one woman that gave a $25 donation to the Freedom Convoy. She took her life savings out of the bank last week, 40 grand. She literally has more confidence with her money under a sofa than she does at one of the big 5 Canadian banks. This is amazing, Sheila. And again, did you ever see this happening? Remember in the financial crisis of 2008, when you saw banks failing in the United States, suddenly the coolest financial institutions in the world were the Canadian banks, the big 5 Canadian banks, stodgy, conservative. Guess what? Stodgy and conservative. That was a cool thing when
that's how
banks
I like my money.
Yeah. And now, thanks to our prime minister and his thugs going after or saying they're going after Canadians who funded something that was perfectly legal when the donation was made. Again, changing the rules in the bottom of the 9th inning. There might indeed be a run on the banks. The Canadian banks, those solid, stodgy, conservative, big 5 banks as we speak. This is all on Justin Trudeau, Sheila.
Yes. By the way, I went and looked back up that email that was leaked by the CBSA employee long-suffering from the Atlantic region. And it's white solidarity, which means you could swap that out with getting along with your coworkers in the workplace, regardless of race. They found that problematic. And also the email goes on to label movies like Avatar problematic because it's white saviorism. Those were blue aliens, but okay. And The Blind Side, where a white family reaches across racial lines to adopt a young black man, and he goes on to do great things. And that was, I guess, a bad thing.
Isn't that amazing?
Because everything is bad.
Sheila, so in other words, a movie that depicts white people as non-racist, i.e. adopting a black man so that he can pursue his football career, that's considered negative. The left is so insane right now, Sheila. They have gone back in time to approving segregation, approving apartheid. I understand there's a school board in the U.S., and they now have 3 separate school board meetings, depending on if you're white, if you're visible minority, or if you're part of the LGBTQ community. That is segregation. That's what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. fought against. He must be rolling in his grave right now, Sheila, but this is what the left embraces now. Please educate me. Explain how this is anti-racist.
Oh, it's the same thing as feminists now saying like, oh no, that man that wants to come in your bathroom,
yeah,
that's fine. And I'm like, I remember when feminists were all about women's only spaces,
yeah,
which is like maybe the one thing I agree with them on. But now they're like, no, that man, he can play on your team. He can pee right beside you. It's perfectly fine. That's feminism. Just like how anti-racism is now the new segregation. It's very strange. Very strange. This is why we need to resist the rewriting of definitions, for sure.
Or in Canada, Sheila, that man can reside with you in a federal prison simply for saying, I'm a chick. Even though he has all his male genitalia attached, even though he's not taking hormone therapy, even though the guy looks like a guy, he merely has to say, I identify as female, and bang, you're in a cell next to a woman who might have had a history of sexual abuse against her. And that's okay. That's okay. Where are the feminists when it comes to this issue? How did transgenderism become such a prevalent thing that it's really, we have the tail wagging the dog vigorously these days, Sheila?
Yeah, there's some strong social contagion there. And again, I'm one of those people that just live your life, but don't involve me at all. I don't care. Until such time as you make me care or use the government to make me care. Yeah. But this is fully entrenched. I know we're on a big tangent, but this is already fully entrenched in the Canadian prison system. I wrote up an article last week where the federal government is looking to hire somebody who works in gender identity disorder for the women's prison. I forget which women's prison it is, because they just listed the prison on the RFP, the request for proposal. So I'm like, what prison? Who's in that prison? It's the women's prison.
And Sheila, you remember we covered that story, a protest of mostly women outside of the Kitchener female penitentiary in Ontario. And to show you how insane their policy is, one of the protesters was a trans person. She was saying, this is wrong, right? I mean, when you even have members of the trans community saying, no, these dudes just pretending to be chicks, that's not right. Who are we listening? Who is Corrections Canada getting their policy talking points from, Sheila?
The activists, and the activists never speak for the entire community. They're just the loudest people and the most media savvy ones, and they know how to get out in front of a camera, but they don't speak for the normal trans people whatsoever. The normal trans people who, for them, they're just like, I just want to be left alone too. I just want to live my life however I see fit. I just want to walk my dog and cut my grass. Perfect, me too. But it's always the activists who are getting all the airtime and making everybody look crazy, by the way.
You're so right.
They're not good role models. Let's keep going. Harper will always be my PM, gives us $2. I wonder if GoFundMe money has to go to JT's foundation for climate causes. I doubt Putin or Xi will be all smiling, planning wars if Mr. Harper and Mr. Trump were in charge, talking with those two blokes. I remember Harper told Putin to his face, get out of Ukraine. Justin Trudeau would never do that. People ignore him actually at these international summits. He doesn't get to sit with the cool kids. He puts out his hand to have it shaken, and people just sort of ignore him and pull away. He leans over to talk to someone and they turn away, and it's like a bad junior high cafeteria incident every time Justin Trudeau goes to a G20 meeting. But it would be it would be genuinely much different. Now, with regard to the GoFundMe money, it's been refunded. They just gave it all back. They were going to give it to approved charities, which would have meant BLM and the Sierra Club probably, but they refunded it after, because that would have been stealing.
Yeah. And Sheila, by the way, speaking of Justin and approved charities and donations, is the We Charity still accepting money these days?
You know, it's funny because that email from the CBSA that I wrote up, they even took a sideways swipe at the We organization for their work in
Whoa.
Africa, calling it volunteerism. So I was like, you know what? I can agree with these people on this, the same way I can agree with radical feminists on women's only spaces. You know, you could reach across the aisle to agree with people if you sit down and listen to them. And I was like, yep, I'm with you on those crooked
More
heel
proof in the
burgers.
pudding, Sheila, that the old saying, even a broken clock is correct twice a day.
Yep. Oh, great. Paul Otto Newman corrects me in a subsequent super chat, but I'm glad because I struggle with this kind of stuff. Gives us $1. I bet if BLM blocks railways again and loots stores, those useless Ottawa or OPP cops will stand doing nothing and watch gangs smashing cop cars. They'll take a knee. They'll take a knee.
Yeah, and believe it or not, speaking of useless police forces, can you imagine, folks, there is the CN police and CP police, which seem to be all about trying to stop hobos from hopping aboard a boxcar or kids spray painting trains. But when it comes to, getting an illegal blockade off the railroad tracks, they turtle. Unbelievable.
Paul Otto Newman gives us $1, and I should be paying him for correcting my pronunciation of Eric Milka. Thank you. Again, it's one of those words that I've only ever read. I've never had the misfortune of being forced to say out loud. There's a lot of those. Eric Milka was the Minister of State Security in the GDR. Later, during the pandemic, the German government used ex-Stasi bosses to help impose restrictions on the German populace. You know, practice makes perfect, as they say.
Yeah.
Reed Giroux gives us $5. Go Rebel News. Paul S. sends us $5. Paul Otto Newman gives us another $1. I should be paying you, Paul. You're correcting my pronunciation. Did you see Senator Don Neil Plett's incredible speech in the Canadian Senate yesterday? It's a bit lengthy, but it's definitely worth the watch. I didn't, but I will watch it. Thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. I like Don Plett. He's a conservative House leader in the Senate, I think. Annalisa, 1964, David Menzies superfan, president of the David Menzies fan club. We should give her a card. Ezra's got that laminating machine. We should laminate one for Annalisa. Make her the president of the Dave Menzies fan club. $20. Hello, my favorites. Great job covering the Trucker Freedom Convoy. Looking hot stuff today, Menzies and Sheila. Beautiful as always. Keep up the great work. Well, thanks. I think I forgot to take a bobby pin out of my hair. I can see it flashing.
If I recall, Annalisa's in the Bonnyville area of Alberta, right?
Is she? Are you?
Am I spreading fake news, Annalisa? I'm not trying to dupe you into sending another super chat, but I think that was mentioned once, but I stand to be corrected.
Let me know, because sometimes I'm up in and around the Bonnyville area. My husband does a lot of work up there, and we quad there in the summertime. So let me know. I would love to meet Annalisa, the super fan, David Menzies fan club president, in person.
In 1986, I got a huge speeding ticket in Bonnyville, Sheila, and I didn't have the money, so I was sentenced to 3 days of picking up trash. I had to work off my fine.
That's great. You were on the chain gang. AMT60 gives us $1. Did you notice that one politician said that half the politicians are under the World Economic Forum? And when he asked which ones were under the World Economic Forum, the speaker said the sound and video were bad. He was accused of misinfo. I think that was a member of the public had given their question to an MP, and the MP was asking on behalf of the member of the public, their constituent, and then all of a sudden it was disappeared, which doesn't do much for my sense of conspiracy, that's for sure. And then it was bad audio. It's
amazing, Sheila, because I remember last year I just happened to be listening to News Talk 1010 on my way to somewhere, and somebody was calling to defend Rebel News, just a listener on the station. And suddenly the audio went, oh, we've lost that caller. And this host had the audacity to say, all you conspiracy theorists out there who think that we purposely dropped the call because it was supporting Rebel News. No, it really was dropped. It reminds me of, I think it was a Seinfeld episode. I think it was Elaine from Seinfeld when she was having a difficult conversation. So she starts... she takes her hairdryer and starts blowing it into the... I'm driving under a tunnel right now. We're losing reception. Is that the game that's being played right now, Sheila?
Yeah. What? Your defendant caller, are you there?
Couldn't argue his point. Had to terminate the call and pretend it was technical difficulties. And yeah, kind of funny that, Sheila, because News Talk 1010, like so many other woke stations, it's owned by Bell Media. Hey, let's talk. Unless we don't like the talk, then we hang up.
Yep. This is another instance of cutting out a man's tongue because you fear what he might say, and that's the digital equivalent of hanging up on someone. Okay. Let's keep going. Harper will always be my PM, gives us $1. JT will probably investigate the useless RCMP like he did his SNC Lavalin. And Dave, any news on the lazy RCMP gang for slamming you into a wall for the princess's Christmas party?
Well, all I can tell you is I think we have launched legal action, and it will be months, if not another year, before there's anything tangible to talk about, whether it's an out-of-court settlement or if it's going to go to trial. Sheila, do you know anything more about the case other than what I just said?
No.
Yeah.
Nope. That's all I got. It's, things are winding. It's just the pandemic, as they say, slows everything down. Isn't that convenient?
The courts were already backlogged before this bloody pandemic.
Yeah, of course.
But folks, I'll tell you now, this is the backlog from hell thanks to the pandemic and all the virtual court sessions, which can be a nightmare, I tell you. But anyways, I promise when we get news about that, I will report it.
Okay, I'm just looking up something here. Oh, I don't want to subscribe to Canada's newsletter. It's in the National Telegraph in 2020, though, but they link back to something. But I don't want to subscribe to Canada's newsletter. I'm just looking up the answer to the next question. So Joyful from the Heart gives us $1. In 2020, didn't Freeland ask the Canadian people how she can access money sitting in bank accounts of the wealthy since they can't use it since there was a pandemic? In an interview with BNN, Business News Network, Minister of Finance at the time, Chrystia Freeland, pondered the idea of trying to gain access to, quote, hoarded cash that people had saved during COVID. In the BNN interview, she said, if people have ideas on how the government can act to help unlock that preloaded stimulus, I'm very interested. Implying that the federal government may be open to anything from tax incentives to get Canadian spending all the way to directly taxing Canadian spending. So it's not that they would just reach in and scoop your cash, as they are doing now, or at least freezing it, but to tax your savings that you've already paid taxes on when you earned the money, by the way. So just tax on tax, like the carbon tax, really.
It kind of sounds to me like a fancy way of saying wealth redistribution, and we know what kind of people buy into that malarkey.
That red dress, I hate it so much, and she bought it in like 4 colors. And I'm not a fashion stylist, obviously. I look like I buy my clothes at the farm supply store.
That's not the one that we have
that
to...
red dress, I hate.
That's not the one we have to use that blue dot in case she sits down in a unladylike way.
That's the problem with that dress. I think she owns it in purple, black, white, or off-white. I think it's white, actually, which is daring. And that red. They're all... There it is. Why? God. Hate that dress so much. It might be flattering on someone else. You know what?
Might be flattering.
You know what? It might be. It's just you got to dress for your body type. That's what I learned a long time ago. I don't like to wear V-necks. I got a neck like a giraffe, and then I look like a turtle. So, there are things, you just around your flaws, and she is just not. Anyways, I can go on for it. This is not a fashion show.
I bet she'd look good in a burqa. I'll tell you that much, Sheila.
David, stop. Okay, let's keep going. Anyways, I went off too long on that, and we're way past. So Harper will always be my PM, gives us $1. I got a few mates in U.S. police services, as those guys actually risk their lives, unlike lazy Canadian cops. My friend in LAPD says people hate us because Joe loves gangs. Canadian cops volunteer to be hated. Again, I'm not anti-cop. I'm not anti-cop, and I think, by and large, our cops are pretty highly trained. But we've thrown out all the good ones, and we promote the bad ones for bad reasons. For example, we've got gender quotas and diversity quotas in Canadian policing. And when you are promoting people for reasons other than their talent, their skill, their commitment, their ethics, their leadership skills, their hard work, if we're promoting people to positions of power who don't have that skill set simply to check a box, that's when you end up with problems in policing. And here we are.
And Sheila, one other angle that I noticed in Ottawa, it was just so perversely ironic that the hard left types, the Antifa types, the people that just last year were having campaigns to defund the police, remember that? They're now the cheerleaders for the police. They're going, come on, whack them and stack them. Get those freedom people out of Dodge as soon as possible. Unbelievable. Suddenly, when the police can be used as useful idiots for a cause that they're against, they're totally pro-blue.
Yeah, it's weird. Ned Zeppelin, I love that name. Gives us $5, says, love your broadcast. Thanks very much. Designer 207 gives us $10. At this time, a more powerful tool for truckers would be to declare a trucking boycott of provincial capitals, ports, and train yards. Don't block them, but make it more expensive to move goods.
Oh, that's coming anyways with the fuel prices soaring, be it a war in Ukraine or new carbon taxes. So careful what you wish for there.
Yeah. Melinda G gives us $60. Wow. $10. I love Rebel News. Well, thank you. Zero Enoch Zero gives us $2. Oh, this is our Israeli friend. Enoch the Salty Pretzel here, just trying out buying credit on Rumble here. The 20% Rumble takes sucks, but couldn't work out to how to buy on Odyssey. You know what? It's still 10% cheaper than what they did to you on YouTube. Yep. So I think YouTube was 30%. But again, it's Rumble's platform. They got to get paid somehow.
That's right.
So I'm not mad about it. And it's still better than YouTube. Trini Canadian gives us $2. The left really abused the act regarding enforcement. It is like this: just because someone might give you permission to steal, it does not mean that you should do it. It's called using discretion. The Emergencies Act is for Ukraine invasion level events. If that were happening in Canada, that's when you would invoke it. Pearl Harbor, 9/11, if the attack happened on our soil, not for horde honking, and hockey scrimmages and soup kitchens and street parties and, as I say, being annoying in a public place, which is the charge of mischief. Becca Henderson gives us $1. Thank you, David and Sheila. I went to a very leftist university, and you guys kept me sane during my degree and my job at a woke organization. You've helped me solidify my conservative values. Thank you. Wow, that's so nice. David, we're doing the Lord's work here. Look at us. We're helping this lady.
My question is, which university is not leftist? I mean, is there a right-of-center university anywhere in North America anymore?
What's PragerU?
Hillsdale College.
I was going to say Hillsdale. I just couldn't remember the name. I was like, what's that one that Mark Levin loved?
That's the
one. Reality Check sends us $50.
Thank you.
Well, thanks very much. Appreciate that. Becca Henderson, $1. Has Rebel heard from Alicia from the hair salon in St. Catharines? I'm from that area, and I hope she's okay. I feel bad about how she has been demonized by the local news and by the rest of Canada. David, do you have an update from her? You should check in on her.
I don't. It's been months since I heard from Alicia. That is a shocking story. of the state turning against her, that horrible reporter with the St. Catharines Standard, LaFleche, basically, I think, my personal opinion, libeling her. And that is definitely a story worthy an update. I'll reach out to her again. I hope she's okay. And she was a wonderful freedom fighter. And my goodness, for having the audacity to reinvent her salon. It was so brilliant as a film production studio to do makeup and haircuts for common citizens. The entire weight of the state and the mainstream media went against her. Meanwhile, literally in St. Catharines, there was a film being shot where the beautiful people of Hollywood, they can get that service done, not the common schleppers of St. Catharines. What a disgrace. And you know what? Thank you for putting that bug in my ear. I'm going to reach out to her later today.
You know, that reminds me of Drea Humphrey in BC when they closed the churches for the pandemic, but then they opened the churches for movie shoots. Like, so you could actually go in and worship sincerely. But if you went in to pretend to worship sincerely, fine. That's perfectly fine. It's good.
Wow.
Ridiculous. Yep. Okie doke. Harper will always be my PM, gives us a buck. Canada could be as wealthy as Dubai with oil if we had a leader and not some trust fund baby with zero life experience in Ottawa. Alberta could be infinitely wealthy if we didn't have to support the rest of the country's bad ideas. Trini Canadian, $2. CNN is going to have a documentary special where they are trying to discredit Alex Jones and how he's a conspiracy theorist. Yet CNN is not the greatest news source. I would love to do a documentary or have somebody do a documentary on CNN and their whole Russia collusion disinfo. They spent like 3-4 years on that. The president was impeached twice. Once after he was president over that garbage. And it was fake from beginning to end. And I hope Hillary Clinton goes to prison for it.
Oh, Sheila, come on, man. Don't kick a network when it's down. Have you seen CNN's ratings lately?
They're CBC-esque, aren't they? Harper will always be my PM, gives us a buck. I wonder if the U.S. Army General will ID as her and she to Putin, just to clarify if he is a girl or guy. Oh, I think you mean about the wokeism infecting. Yeah. Trini Canadian, $1. Team Sheila and David on Amazing Race. Would watch that, David. That would be so fun, right?
I'm too fat. I wouldn't be able to keep up with you, Sheila.
We'll let you ride your bike.
Oh, then I'm in.
Yeah. We could go around the world solving riddles. I could do that.
Like Ed Enigma, a.k.a. the Riddler?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we should. I'm going to see when the auditions are for it. That would be fun. We should do it.
Count me in.
Okay, perfect. I don't know. I'm going to start training my replacement for a couple of weeks. History Club World, $5. As Russia is now invading Ukraine, it reminds me of the beginning of World War II when Hitler got the German majority regions of Czechoslovakia and then went all out and got all of it a few months later. Yeah. That's an interesting parallel.
I hope that doesn't come to fruition, but would it surprise you?
No, it's the same rhetoric. It's literally the same rhetoric where they're saying there's no distinction between Russians and Ukraine, so we're just going to take Ukraine because they are our people too. And the Ukrainians are saying, no, we're not. Yeah. It's a very similar parallel.
And as you said earlier, Sheila, Moldavia, which Putin believes is now, or at least part of it is identifying as Ukraine, therefore it's Russian. By the way, is this meeting the benchmark of a minor or major invasion when it comes to President Biden, Sheila? Because we know he was okay with a minor one.
Yeah, and I think he was vice president when Russia annexed Crimea.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they just waited till he was the guy in charge, I guess, because they didn't do anything last time. Harper will always be my PM, gives us a buck. Says, I guess my foster parents must be racist as they're black and adopted me. being white, welcoming me to their home. My new parents and 2 sisters all cannot stand the BLM gang and racist BS lines.
Wow. Isn't that something? Huh.
It's great. Annalisa, 1964, says she is in Cold Lake. So you were very close, just up the road from Bonnyville.
Is there still a military base there? Isn't there some aircraft?
Yeah, Clar.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Clar. Cold Lake Air Weapons Range. Do a lot of drilling up there. It's oil sands country. Becca Henderson gives us $1. Dr. Hergy, the Niagara public health doctor, is calling for tax breaks for the vaccinated. Oh, we must unleash Tamara on this. She is like the public health watcher of Ontario. Like, if anything happens in the greater sort of south central Ontario region, and a public health officer did it, she's all over it like white on rice.
She does great work on that file.
Oh, yeah. Harper will always be my PM, gives us $1. Princess Freeland, that dress may be better on you in a different size. Thank you. Thank you. That is the point that I was awkwardly trying to make. Maybe you know, some people shrink when they get older. Some people go the other way. But it's okay to adjust your clothing size accordingly. That's all I have to say. It's reality.
Maybe it shrank in the wash, the dress.
I don't know. I hate it so much. I hate it so much.
Oh,
it
the
makes me
claws
nervous.
are out. Look at Sheila got
her dress
go.
makes me nervous. It makes me nervous is all. I feel like I'm going to see things that I don't want to see. I'm already seeing things I don't want to see. That's the problem. Size up. Anyway, Stephen D. James, $5. I don't think that anyone appreciates people making threats to politicians in the chats. I agree. You may not like them or agree with them. Please be respectful. Yeah, we are anti-threatening violence.
Yeah,
because Go ahead.
Yeah, to me, Sheila, that means you've lost the argument. You can't argue it on its merits if you're doing ad hominem attacks, if you are threatening violence. You've lost the debate. Simple as that.
Yeah. Well, and people have repeatedly tried to solve their political disagreements with our journalists, including myself and David, through violence. So we are anti-political violence of any form, whether it's to someone you like or someone you don't like. That's not what you do in a free society. If someone has a bad idea, you meet their bad idea with more speech and more ideas. You don't meet it with a fist.
100%.
Yeah. David Bird, 14, $10. The BC church fires from a year ago, I believe, are now dropped. May want to double check. Do not want to be labeled as misinformation. Actually, one of them is being sentenced today. And Drea's on that story. But you won't, it's one of those things that you won't hear about in the mainstream media because that didn't happen, according to them. There weren't over 50 church fires last year. It was just nothing. It was nothing. It was just nothing.
The most overlooked, underreported story of 2021, Sheila, by a landslide.
Yep. JD Bedbrook gives us $5. Sheila, have you thought about running for parliament? You would have my vote. No.
Yes.
No. I've thought about it and immediately said no. And people have, and not that I have thought about it like personally, people have forced me to think about it through their constant badgering. And I'm not saying that you're badgering me. I appreciate that you think that I'm capable of that. People around me like to badger me about this sort of stuff. And I think that my job is best on the outside, holding politicians to account. I don't like politicians. I don't want to be one.
Sheila, you would be an all-star. I know the big boss man, he's urging that. I'm urging that. And it makes me wonder, is there a skeleton in Sheila Gunn-Reid's closet that she doesn't want exposed should you run for office? Because I can't think of anything. You are overqualified to be an MP or a senator.
I want to hold politicians to account. I think they're all a bunch of liars. And I think it's my job to work from outside the system to hold these liars to account on behalf of the normal people, of which I am one. I don't want to be one of them. Ever, ever, ever. Never. Ever. Okay. Never. Ever. Ever. Okay. Anyways.
Does that mean no?
We're like, I think that's a hard no. Trini Canadian gives us $1. and says, don't make me put AD between you and David to separate you two. And I think that is the end of the show. It is 11:34 out here in Alberta, 1:34 in the center of the universe in Toronto, which means it is 34 minutes past David's last feeding time. So we should wrap up the show.
Well, thank you so much, Sheila. And thank you, folks, for tuning in. A special thank you for all of you who contributed financially to us. It's how we keep this studio going. Sheila and I will be back in this space at this time on Tuesday. Tomorrow, a couple of other rebels will be in this space. And in the meantime, folks, stay sane.
Dear Prime Minister Trudeau, I want to speak to you today about your current approach to and treatment of our fellow Canadians who are protesting your federal vaccine mandates. They have asked to meet with you, Prime Minister. Medical experts, top scientists, doctors, nurses, parents, grandparents, intelligent, loving, concerned citizens. Why won't you sit with them? If you are so convinced of your own reasons for the mandates, sit down and walk the leaders of a group of 2.3 million protesters across the country who represent many millions more across the nation and explain it to them. And ask them to listen with open hearts and minds. And then reciprocate. Listen to what they have to say with a mind open to hearing things that might go against the ideas you are entrenched in. Maybe there are solutions that could bring Canadians together right now that you have not considered. You unify people by finding solutions together, not by vilifying those who say there is a better way. What we need right now from our leadership is unification, and that requires being willing to see, recognize, and hear from the people sitting out in the cold at your door. And if you think that there is no sense, no intelligence, and no humanity in those people, please listen to Needle Points by Norman Doidge, a vaccinated psychiatrist and psychoanalyst who has painstakingly and comprehensively laid out why these protesters are not unreasonable or unjustified in having great concern over the current state of vaccination affairs. Or better yet, go outside and meet those protesters for yourself. That is what a true leader would do. They would go out and meet their constituents, look them in the eye, and treat them with respect. I have heard firsthand accounts from people in Ottawa saying that they have had local Ottawa citizens come down to see for themselves the fury and destruction that is going on in their own city, only to find thousands of people singing, dancing, hugging, waiting patiently, speaking kindly, cleaning up the streets, and generally sharing the true Canadian spirit. They have been mystified because you and the corporate media have painted a very different picture. You as a group have gone from ignoring these protesters to dismissing them as a fringe minority, to smearing them as racist and misogynistic, to now attacking them as terrorists. When you became Prime Minister of Canada, you did not just become the Prime Minister of the people who agreed with you. You became Prime Minister of every Canadian. You don't get to pick and choose who you will care about. It is your civic duty to care about all Canadians, even those who you disagree with. Treating them with prejudice, suspicion, and illegal repression is not care. Protesting something that deeply, deeply concerns you in our society is not terrorism. It is the civic duty of every Canadian. It is our job as the people to hold our leadership accountable if they are infringing on our inalienable rights, if we suspect that they have become corrupted or compromised in any way, or simply if we think they're wrong in monumental decisions they are making on behalf of their people. But you are treating my brothers and sisters, your constituents, like terrorists without ever speaking to their leadership. There are no riots. This is not a violent protest. There is only a mass of deeply concerned citizens at your doorstep who you refuse to acknowledge for what they are, your people. To everybody listening, everybody, people who disagree with the mandates and people who agree with them, if you think that the person on the other side of this divide is your enemy, please take time to get to know them. Listen with an open heart to what they're really saying. And remember that we're all humans who get scared and feel pain, and most of us are just trying our best to build the brightest future for the next generation and the happiest, most fulfilling, most peaceful and healthy today. Don't let the press brainwash you into division and hatred. The antidote to prejudice is knowledge. Because of the algorithmic way your Google searches are filled, it can be very hard to find good information on the other side. Ask someone you know. If you could share 5 things with me that would explain your point of view, what would they be? I want to listen to them. This is what I do, and it has kept me sane through all of this insanity. Listening is the only way out of the ideological mess the media has broiled us all into. May cooler, wiser, more loving heads prevail right now. The future of our society depends upon it.